Climate change is without a doubt the most pressing issue of our time. What made you become an ecologist? Did you know back then that it's going to be so pressing, the climate issue?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to your program. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. So first, I must go back many years ago when I started studying biology. That was in Argentina, in the central part of Argentina, Cordoba. At that time, there were no union students. So because of there was at the time the dictatorship, military coup, there was governing the country at that time. And there was a possibility only having some student activity through some parallel organizations that not necessarily were related to the student union because they were forbidden. So we had the chance of organizing on dealing on environmental issues. At that time in Argentina, in Cordoba, there was a major deforestation process. So we have as a union, as a student that were studying biology at the time, get to know about the reality of deforestation in that area. So that's the way I enter into the area that was not at the beginning my idea, but it was important for me having some student activity or student participation within the university, and that was the way of getting exposed to environmental problems. And then when I started studying, my studies led me to global environmental change, let's say that relates also to climate change and land use change, that also is not less important than climate because the things go together, land use and climate change. And then I was lucky that when I finished my PhD in Jerusalem, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, I got a fellowship for going to study an issue related to climate change on one of the very first experimental studies on manipulating climate. And that was in the UK, in Imperial College. And we have a field site where we manipulated climate and rainfall by a unique experimental setup, warming the soil, changing the rainfall, and look how the system in that time was a calcareous grassland, how we're responding. But I'm talking about in the early 90s of the last century.
Yeah, it sounds like this is a long-term research, like that has been done for maybe decades.
Indeed, one of the key issues of climate change research is the having long-term data, and was at that time a main lack of having this data. We don't have really long-term monitoring or long-term experiments dealing on how the natural systems will respond to changes in climatic conditions.
From the scientific point of view, do you see changes in germination of seeds, of the soil components, of the air quality?
I see changes all the time. And when I started dealing with issues of climate change, I need to wrote a proposal, and I did a literature research about combining different studies. The knowledge has been increasing exponentially at the time. So now we have more data, more information on what's going on. But at the very beginning, we were in a sea of lack of data, and this is critical for doing climate change research. So now we know that things are changing. We also know that the rate of the change is much, much faster than we thought at the beginning. So the urgency of making changes is even more critical if we want not to lose the last chance we have for having a no return, reaching a certain tipping point where the climatic conditions that the humanity have developed will not be the same anymore.
We have the tools, we have the knowledge. What's next?
We are now certain that the climate that is changing due to human activities, we are the factor that is leading to this very high rate of change that has no precedent in the history of the earth. Now we need to search for new crops, for new varieties that will be adapted to the increasing uncertainty and to the increasing of extreme events that are characterized by climate change. As the knowledge, we now need to transfer that knowledge into the policy making. And the policy makings are, so the politics are seeing that they cannot being blind about the reality that they're exposed. So we call it the climate crisis, because it's affecting the food production, it's affecting the livelihoods of many, many people around the world. Mainly the poor people are those who will be suffering and are currently be suffering with all the consequences on the global economy, on the global geopolitics. And it is within us to claim for changes on the priorities that the politics is driving today our life, our daily life.
With all that has been said, like how to remain optimistic. It seems like what you describe is that we are on a Titanic and we are heading toward this iceberg. Most people maybe are not even aware. You say it's the scientific community. I'm not sure even students in universities are much aware of the climate crisis.
We need to be optimistic, otherwise there's no chance. We have no planet B, as many people say. So we need to fight for change. And for that, we still know, we understand that it's still not too late. There will be important changes. Definitely the climate will be increasing, the temperature will keep on going. But definitely we know that if we don't make any significant change, the consequences will be paid by the future generations.
Could you say how much time we have left to transform maybe the future of humanity?
We have a very small time window. So the gap of reaching a certain tipping point is getting closer and closer and closer. So definitely we need to act, and as soon as we do that, changes is the better.
How do you see these rise in the temperature affects the germinations of various seeds, plants, and will we have enough food in the future? Doesn't it scare you?
Indeed, there's a big major problem with talking about food security. When you're talking about, as I said before, the crops that most of the food that we consume has been domesticated by us. All the food that we eat is actually not, very few of them actually wild plants. All the food that we consume, mainly we have, say, 10 cereals that are the main, those who we consume, around 10, 15. But in the world of the vegetation, of the plants, we have 400,000 vascular plants. So there is still many plants that can still be domesticated, and there's a need for finding new crops that probably they are already adapted to different climatic conditions, or the future climatic conditions. So that's definitely, the food issue is a critical one, and the places where we cultivate today certain varieties of coffee maybe not be suitable anymore, and we'll need to move to another places or to search for traits that are allowed these plants to grow in the places that we continue to grow in.
Let me ask you a personal question. For what in life you feel most grateful?
I am grateful of having the chance of doing what I like to do. So I like to do research, to be in the academic area, and being lucky of saying, well, this topic interests me, so I have the opportunity to go and study it and get deeper into that topic. And once I learn already part of the topic on how the system functions, I move to another topic and I enrich my knowledge with the idea also of serving the public, because I am in the academics, and the idea is to serve the public, to teach, to instruct people, to pass the knowledge, and for search for a more right society.
What can we learn from your research? Like you see, you're saying we are doing manipulations on climate, on the soil, on nutrients, light regimes, and maybe also levels of carbon dioxide in greenhouses. Could you tell maybe some of takeaways, results?
We are running a very long-term experiment in the June Hills, doing rainfall manipulations.
Mhm.
The idea of doing experimental work on climate change research is try to bring the future to now. We don't have the time for long-term monitoring
Wow.
and see how the changes will be in 50, 70 years. So by doing manipulations of, in this case, rainfall, that we consider is the main driver in our dryland ecosystem, we try to simulate how is going to be the response of the natural ecosystem if we reduce rainfall and if we change the pattern of the rainfall during the rainfall season. So we're doing actually, say, being type of a god, and we decide when the rainfall will fall and how much will fall based on scenarios that we get from the people doing climate modeling. So the response is, I'm going to try to see how the vegetation is responding. Mainly, I'm a plant ecologist, so how the vegetation is responding if we see changes in the type on the species that they are in the field. Now we're talking about natural vegetation. That's those who are giving the ecosystem services, and see if this also lead to changes in nutrients in the soils, the microbial community, the mesofauna, the biology of the soil is changing, and try to look in an integrative way how the natural systems will respond.
What do you think, in your opinion, what's the role of the university in reducing the carbon footprint?
Last year, or just a few months ago, we got a report to get an inventory how much the university is producing greenhouse gases, or for the activities, how much emissions there are from the daily activities, from the buildings, for the water we consume, from the transportation, for the electricity that we consume, how much we are actually emitting. And based on this inventory, we are now making a plan with the idea, or long-term plan, to significantly reduce the carbon emissions of the university within the general plan that we want to get to net zero. That's on the very long run. Hopefully, that should be our scope, trying to get to net zero. And this is something that many universities around the world, the leading universities around the world, understand that definitely it is critical that as a higher education level, that we show the lead to other places. And definitely that's what's going in the university. The university is committed to lead on the national scale, and we are the first university that has been elaborated this type of report on trying to get the quantitative data on how much we emit, and this definitely will serve as a basis for building a plan of continue reducing from all the activities of the university.
I know you were part of an Israeli university's delegation to the UK, studying what could be done, right? So what did you learn new?
Definitely, I was lucky that I was invited to travel to UK and see what they are doing there. They have been working on trying to get the reduction of emissions for many years. And we have a visit on different universities that are actually building this plan, and they are reducing their carbon emissions, their carbon footprint, the ecological footprint from the university. And we first of all understood that it's a big challenge, that nobody has the right formula how to do it. It's a learning process, and we're going through this always also this learning process, and we will learn from them or from other universities how to do it the best way possible.
Do you feel you have a willingness to cooperate here in the university, reducing the carbon footprint?
We separate our carbon footprint in three elements. First of all, the amount of energy that is the amount of the emissions that they are being produced by the direct consumption of elements like electricity that lead to emissions of carbon dioxide that we use as a coin of comparison carbon emissions, CO2 emissions.
So 54% is indirect activities, and the rest is direct. I believe this is, like you say, the majority is from electricity, and then the rest is like maybe from flying to other countries.
We definitely the main elements that are related to the emissions, at least from our university, are related to the energy consumption. So definitely we need to find new sources where to buy the energy, and to make plans for energy efficiency, increase our efficiency, and try to produce our own energy. Trying to put solar panels in all buildings, on try to create our own
So
energy.
this is like the university's role. And then you mentioned also the cafeterias. And I said, okay, what's the students' roles before we even reach out the politicians, right? So the students, I don't know how many students here in Tel Aviv University are aware of the climate change. Do you see a revolution starting here from Tel Aviv University?
There is a major change also from the students. Students is the biggest community in the university. We have around 30,000 students. It's our biggest community, definitely. And students are the lead of the change, are leading the change. And we work together with the union, the student union, also to understand the responsibility, and they are partners in this change, definitely. It is now the time for acting. We have no time, no more delays can be done, and we definitely need to change our comfort zone. We need to change our consumption mode, and definitely get involved in all activities that will lead to change for a future, for a better future. Definitely, and their commitment is critical for this change.
How do you see the state of Israel being prepared toward the climate change?
Definitely, the reality of the Middle East, we will definitely be affected similarly. The climate has no borders, so what's going on to happen here. It's going to be also affect Jordan, will affect Lebanon, will affect Syria, will affect Egypt. So climate has no border, and the effects will be feel every place. The government is talking about climate change, but when you look on the real budget that has been invested into that, is only a very small amount. So definitely we need to prioritize, to request the prioritization of climate change, and the potential of both mitigation and adaptation, an adaptation plan. That's something that still need to be done, and it thinks is urgent.
Your research, you're running manipulations maybe to predict and see what's gonna. How do you see this in 5 to 10 years from now?
Definitely, we need more people studying this phenomena, both from the climate point of view, both from the ecological point of view, and both from the technology potential of finding solutions. Definitely, this area is increasing the request of the interest, and also the request for jobs. For example, we have a course, it's called Climate Crisis, that is open to most of the students of the university. And we started 2 years ago, and around 2,000 students already been exposed to the topic of climate crisis.
This is in Hebrew.
This is in Hebrew. We may think in the future also making it in English.
Absolutely.
Create a mock. It's a very important course that is open, and we have very good feedback.
Have you done in your life personal changes knowing that it will make the world a better place?
Well, one of the major changes I did was my diet. I don't eat any meat anymore. I'm coming from a family that were cattle rangers. So I'm coming from the gauchos, Jews gauchos in Argentina. And when I get exposed to the environmental impact of the cattle industry, the beef industry and dairy industry, definitely I could not stand and say, well, it's something that is not happening. And I need to make a change on my diet. That's something that definitely everyone can do that.
Yeah.
First of all, reduction of all the elements that are the amount of energy or the amount of natural resources that needed to produce 1 kilo of beef is huge. So we now say, for example, 40 million kilometers square. 40 million kilometers squares are derived on the global scale for the cattle industry.
Yeah.
How much is 40 million kilometers square? If you consider the whole American continent,
Yeah.
is 42 million kilometers square. So we say that almost all America is derived or for pasture for cattle or for food for feeding that cattle. If we significantly reduce part of this area and we move to other type of crops, the hunger in the world would definitely will
So
I don't know if it will disappear.
why don't we do it? And why there is no correlation between the price, the ecological price, and the price of the product?
We are subsidizing actually the environmental cost of the food we consume. We're not paying for the mismanagement of the soil that people are using when they're cultivating, and the soil is being washed, or they have soil erosion, and that soil that takes thousands of years for being developed ends at the end of the lakes or end at the end of the rivers. We are actually not paying the real cost of the food. All the food actually is being subsidized by the government or the different governments that are not taking into consideration the impact of food production. Definitely, now there is a movement on try to get into more sustainable agriculture, getting these elements in consideration, reducing the tillage, doing no tillage. So you don't tillage, you keep the soil in the ground, and you keep it more protected, and you need less inputs. When you put fertilizers, yes, the fertilizers are for producing fertilizers, you consume a huge amount of energy. So you need to make all the elements into the cycle and consideration how much is the impact of producing food. Now today, 2 billion people are going hungry to bed.
Yeah.
2 billion people.
Yeah.
And if we consider that what's going on climate change and the potential of effects of climate change on natural crops, or mainly on the areas that are actually dependent on rain-fed agriculture, those areas are actually the most poor ones, definitely will be more affected, and the hunger definitely may increase with the consequences, the social consequence of climate migration and pressure and hunger, and all the elements are related when people don't have food, and the conflicts that can derive.
If I was a student interested to study in Tel Aviv University, why should I come and study specifically plant ecology?
I think an interaction between plants and insects and all elements that relate to nature. Actually, having the chance in my lab of working in nature, because my lab actually is outside the university. My lab is in natural fields, in agricultural fields, and being outside and understand how the system functions and which are the mechanisms that are leading the functioning of these elements, of this natural system, I think it's very, I like it very much.
What's the profile of a good student that you're looking for?
A person who is very, as I say, very curious, has independent thinking, is hardworking, is not afraid of getting the hands dirt, who is willing to be in touch with spines and willing to do hard work.
What's the meaning of life?
Helping other people.
Absolutely.
Helping the people you like and people you know, and trying to be having a positive impact on your surrounding. That's a part of the purpose. But first of all, being a good person. That's and enjoy the fact that we have the luck of being alive.
Do you have any person you are looking up to, or that inspired you to be the person that you are now?
My father was a self-made man, starting from very below, being a very poor family, and trying to improve himself along during his life of being a good person, try help people.
What Taoism means to you?
We are lucky that in Tel Aviv University we have a campus that is all in one campus, and we can have the activities that are in campus. There are huge amount of daily activities. If you look into the website and you see all the lectures and all the free conference that you can get in, and the from going to the theater or to the listen music in the School of Music, and I think its own activities that they have here as the Cosmos.
Amazing. So that being said, any student from any discipline or program can come and listen to your talk about climate change.
The people can lecture. Well, some of the lectures are closed, but in general, just getting there. Many people also get you can get into any class and listen some of the other personal lectures if they're allowed to as free entrance but the conference and the workshops and the elements and the seminars that they're on the daily basis in university, people can get in and learn and listen and increase their knowledge and open their minds. I think the role of the university is open the minds of people, and here is the place.
Marcelo, I had great time talking to you. Thank you so much for making
Thank you first for inviting me, and it was a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks.